Harris Woodley, and I'm in a rural circuit, Shropshire and Marches, working the northern end of the circuit. And so when I came to the circuit in 2019, September, and I had been in a rural circuit down in Kent, and there I'd been leading Forest Church. And when I came up here, I was hoping that I would be able to build on those skills and lead sort of Forest Church here. And I can remember going to see my spiritual accompanist just before Lent started of 2020 and saying to him, I had hoped that I would be able to do this and this. And when I was driving home, I thought, go for it. So there's a book called Wild Lent by Rachel Summers. So which was a book I had. So I sent emails round, organised, etc., and arranged to lead Wild Lent across my area. Now, I work across a large area, and there's currently 18 churches. And the plan was to meet each week in Lent in a different area across my beautiful countryside, and to lead something in a Wild Lent sort of style. Now, as you know, halfway through 2020 Lent, COVID started. So we met in the woods, and we met by the canal. We took our shoes and socks off as we walked along the canal. And then the week after that, we were in lockdown. So then I was looking on there's a Facebook group for Forest Church. I was looking on there, and somebody had posted that they had arranged a group where people were to meet quietly by themselves in their garden and then gather together on a Zoom meeting to reflect on what they'd reflected on in nature. So from then onwards, I was arranging once a month a Zoom meeting, a Forest Church Zoom meeting using that style. And then thankfully we came out of lockdown and I was able to start again. So we meet once a month. We meet all over the place. So it might be by the canal, by the lake, in a nature reserve. We've also got some churches who have got graveyards, and we've met there also. We meet any beautiful place across our area. And the work's developed as time's gone on. But I found advertising difficult, and I once started to wonder if I had just one place where we met, perhaps I could advertise that better. So I then started to look for an area that we could develop as a Forest Church site. And I didn't know this, but one of my churches that we had been meeting in the graveyard said, there's that patch of land behind the graveyard that belongs to us. I mean, it was up to here in brambles and nettles, so I hadn't seen it. And it was completely behind a metal fence, which had to be, I don't know, cut away to be able to get into the space. So the people of the church got that land completely cleared, and we were on bare earth. But then I was very busy. Like months went past, and the nettles and the brambles grew up again. So where we are now is we meet once a month for Forest Church, and we still meet all over the place, all sorts of places, particularly because I want to continue to encourage my churches across the area, not just at where the Forest Church site is. And we're currently also meeting on another day, once a month, to work on the Forest Church site, and like clearing weeds, making a fire pit, planting, etc. And that second gathering is billed as we do some work, and then we have a drink, and people bring poems or readings or any inspirational thoughts that they have to share. And there's people who come because it's on a different day. There's slightly different people that come to the different gatherings. Um, and but some of the people that come to the sharing gathering also come to the Forest Church. And I've noticed that they always bring along their books to share their poems or their readings, even on when it's a non-structured sharing group. So the one that goes all around the place, I always to share a bit about what we do. I always try and go and be in the area in the week beforehand so that I can be inspired by being in nature and the area to then consider what and how we will share. I'm often because I am advertising and putting a theme on, writing a theme on the poster. Um, I'm often inspired things I read in books or hear in different places, and it might just be like two words, and I think, oh, there's something there, so I write that down as the title, and then in the week beforehand, I'm preparing the what. We gather. There's little structure, and I generally don't offer much content. We never have written liturgy. I'm not really keen on written liturgy anyway. That's just me. I'm dyslexic. But we never have sort of formal prayers or written prayers. And we've only ever sung when it's been Christmas, when we had some carols. So there's usually a theme which I introduce, and then people go off with that theme, whatever it is, and spend time in nature, reflecting and being inspired in nature on whatever the theme is. And we have sharing times. So we contemplate, explore, play, and share. And we've done things like we've weaved with nature. We've used our senses. So I'd heard a story. I'd heard someone sharing, a blind person sharing, how during COVID, usually they go out walking and they'd have a guide, but during COVID, of course, they couldn't have that. And this person was explaining that he was being sent podcasts of a route description, very detailed, and that he was following the route description, listening to the podcast, walking out on his own. So I thought, well, what if we met in the overgrown graveyard and we wore blindfolds and we sensed and walked around just sensing what we could with our feet? So we did that, and it was really surprising how much we could sense with our feet and not being able to see. We've seen life and death in nature. We've played with the sunshine using water and seeing the light reflecting. And we've also used that blue paper to make, well, I don't know what they're called, sun pictures. We have at various places had a fire and sat round and reflected on light. And one time we also made simple bread, which we then ate at the Forest Church site. The people who come to the Forest Church, so originally it was people who were connected to my churches, and they still come. I don't get great numbers. I've got quite a long list of people who have come at some point who are interested in it, maybe 30 people, but at a different set, I might get 6 people or I might get 10 people. I don't get great numbers. So yeah, some people are coming who are connected to my churches. But I now have some people come who are Methodists, but have walked away from their Methodist church because the particular contexts were of really no hope. So they come to the Forest Church. And I have some people who have somehow, I don't know how, heard about my Forest Church and are coming along, but are completely not connected with church. So I've got people on the margins, people who are outside church but know about church, and people outside church who don't know about church, if that makes sense. And quite a lot of people who come because they care about creation. So they've got that sort of hat on as well. I've got hopes for the future that the people who come are of they're either my age or a bit older, or of the bit older than that. I was having a 90-year-old come, but sadly she's died. But completely happy to join in doing whatever tasks or sessions that I've laid out. So with the permanent site, I would like to run a children's group. And that was one of the things of why we developed a full-time site, so that would also be easier to advertise and plan for, particularly because the role of my work as a deacon in this area covers 18 churches. So, I'm spread out all over the place. But if I want to develop something further, so I've got sort of hopes for the future for this area. But this site we've prepared, but we still want to keep the Forest Church that travels around. It can meet in the area, but we also want to still have it traveling around so that we encourage people right across our area. I think that I really love Forest Church, and that if I wasn't involved in traditional church, this would be the church I would be looking for.
My name is Lol Wood, and I'm the family project leader for the churches in Linsdale. And what you can see on this page is a cross filled with very colourful people, and that is a family project symbol. And then there's me in a blue dress with a young girl, and we are admiring the flowers in the churchyard. So a quick background to my job role. My post was created by ecumenical churches coming together and realising that inherited church isn't working for everybody. They decided to employ somebody to lead a project called the Family Project that focused on creating different ways of enabling families to explore faith. So I'm funded and commissioned by both the Methodist and the Anglican churches. All the teams under the Family Project are ecumenical, and it's a huge core part of us, as we found it does matter to people outside of the church. As soon as they realise that we're working together, you can see that it interests them and pleases them. Denominations don't matter to people outside of church, but people working well together really does. And church doesn't carry a great reputation, often to those outside of it. When we say we work together as churches, it breaks down those ideas that they've come with, those presumptions. We also work closely with our local schools and shops, such as the bookshop, and all of this is noticed by our families. We are here and part of the wider community, and we want to work with these people and learn from each other. So all this is part of the backdrop to the Family Project, and one of our fresh expressions we do that we call Foresty. So on this slide, you might notice there's a big stone with red Wellington boots and the number 11 on it, with the hashtag KL Muddy Church. I will explain about these stones a bit later. Foresty originally began as Muddy Church. We discerned in Kirkby Lonsdale that people loved being outdoors. And I remember the conversation I had with a local parent who said their kids loved being outside, but it was tough with no garden. Often the families have moved here for the lakes or the Yorkshire Dales, but the houses in Kirkby, although they might be quite big, either have a small garden or none at all. We're lucky to have a glebe field behind the rectory and a beautiful churchyard which we've been encouraged to use for any of the projects we do. So we have the space, and we've heard the desire for more outdoor activities for families. Perhaps we thought this could be a way of exploring a new form of church. So like many people, we developed a plan, and then lockdown began. We pressed pause on a few things, but in time our team, which was then a Muddy Church team, came up with the idea to engage local families on their hourly walks. We set up a muddy trail around the churches in our local area. So what you can see here is a kind of tick box style sheet, which includes all the trail clues and the images. So every stone is part of this. The team and I painted these stones in our own houses and then gathered them together. The Wellington boots became a symbol of our muddy church. And on the backs of the stones were moral quotes. Some were about faith, so faith-based quotes, but some were just good quotes, wise quotes. As a team, we produced the clues and helped people find the places we'd hidden the muddy stones. When we launched it on social media, people were keen and eager to find them. Our Facebook feed became full of families doing selfies next to the various stones on their hourly walks. We knew a good chunk of our local families had engaged with it. So this slide shows a child painting a birdhouse. And I think they were doing tulips maybe on the side. And the other thing it shows is a colourful sign filled with Easter eggs advertising our Easter muddy trail. So these are two other, so we did many things. These are two of the other lockdown activities we offered in communities. When lockdown eased, we were keen to gather this same community. We had planned our first session and advertised it through shops, local schools, and social media. I think our first session was based on the armour of God, because pictured here is a yellow and red shield with a sword and a hobby horse, plus two young women acting out fighting a dragon puppet scene. Only 5 children came and 3 adults, aside from our team. We did have a lovely time, but we were puzzled. We did a further 2 sessions of Muddy Church and the numbers were increasing. In this picture, you can see that I'm holding a packet of biscuits with 3 children around the fire pit, and we are about to make s'mores. Now, I know, as many of you will, that numbers are not everything, and I'm really keen to stress that. In my ministry, sometimes the smallest turnout has been the most profound, and we've learned the most from one another. And on this screen, I've put a picture of a wonderful family who come to many things that we do. And on this day, they alone turned up to our Muddy Church. But as we gathered, the eldest boy decided this was the time he was going to teach his mum the Lord's Prayer. And that's something we had been teaching them in school. But despite all this, we knew that something wasn't right. We'd made the connections with the local families in lockdown, but where had they all gone? I went to our local toddler group and chatted to several mums and dads about this quandary. And I remember distinctly one mum said something which struck me. It's the term muddy. Lots of our houses have cream carpets and we don't want mud on them. It was just so simple. The name was really putting people off coming. The images of Wellington boots being worn to Muddy Church weren't helping either. When we gathered for our last Muddy Church, we asked those faithful families who had come to think about a new name with us. We came up with Foresty. We had thought about Forest Church, but 2 things had stopped us from fully using that term. So this slide shows the advert for Greenbelt with the motto artistry, activism and belief. My Muddy team and I had attended an example of Forest Church at Greenbelt. It was really beautiful. The liturgy, the space for wonder. But as we looked around, we realised most people who were attending were adults, with a handful of teenage children, or teens, I should say. The people that we were connecting with wouldn't really cope with the amount of sitting still. And the thought-provoking but very wordy liturgy wouldn't work for our younger children. This example of Forest Church just wouldn't work for us. But the concept of exploring God in nature and the essence of Forest Church we were really passionate about, and committed to exploring. Secondly, it was the term church. We'd increasingly found that this word was problematic for many of the parents in our area. For a variety of reasons, it can and still does put them off. Now, I know some people advocate using this word church in every form of fresh expression and pioneer ministry, as it points people to what they can expect. There's going to be a little bit of talk about God. But we knew it would put people off who might otherwise be more than happy to come and explore the concept of knowing God, but weren't so sure about being part of an institution. We also believed it was possible to be church without calling it church. So together we landed on the name Forestry. So this slide shows 11 individuals of all different ages beginning to disperse to complete the scavenger hunt on our very green glebe field. Now our format hasn't really altered since our times leaving Muddy Church outside. Forestry meets bi-monthly on the third Sunday in the afternoon after rugby, as requested by our families. Our Forestry sessions begin with a short welcome and an explanation of what the topic is and a rough sketch of what we'll be doing. We've learnt to do a run-through of the whole programme quite quickly because some who attend prefer to know what will happen next. After our welcome, we usually have a scavenger hunt where they collect either pictures related to nature or objects from nature in wicker baskets. We encourage everyone to get involved, but we do have a rule to not pick anything that is growing. Part of our ethos is respect for the natural world. I'd say about 90% of the time that works. As we regroup, we share our thoughts on what we've found. So pictured here is on this slide is a picture of Mary, Joseph, and a more adult Jesus. And this picture has been coloured in using mud, grass, leaves, and some tiny yellow petals. After our scavenger hunt, we move to a story, and this is Bible-based and tends to be a mix of storytelling and interaction. We know that everyone can and does offer insights to God and the mystery of this earth and the place that we call home. So in here, we've got a young girl holding an autumnal leaf that is filled with greens, oranges, and yellows. And there's also a picture of flowers on pieces of paper, and the flowers are all different colours. There are no experts at Forestry. We all learn together. After our story, we usually have an activity. This might be planting something, it could be doing some land art or baking. On here, if you can see, we've baked bread. It's kind of a twirly bread on these long sticks. We're baking it over our fire pit. We always aim to link the story and the ethos of spotting God in nature into our activity. Finally, we move around a fire pit where we make our own s'mores, which we all enjoy immensely. And the satisfaction of licking off our melted marshmallows is just next level. As you can see on this slide, there's one young girl holding a s'more very proudly with just 2 chocolate biscuits, and they've got a melted marshmallow in the middle. And then we've got one of our regulars who's a young lad who loves to lick the marshmallow off the stick. And then the rest of it is a picture of other people gathering to also melt their marshmallows. As we eat, we chat, and then we gradually move to singing some songs. Now, often these are worship songs that learn to the local school, so we're more than happy to be led by the children who attend, because often they know these worship songs and their actions better than anyone else. Then we end with a prayer or blessing, and this is usually interactive too. We may incorporate a bit of BSL as part of our prayer. So this picture shows a large group of people on a picnic mat, listening to one of the Forestry leaders explaining the next activity. Forestry lasts an hour and a half and is my personal favourite form of church. Feedback we've had have included comments such as, "This feels most like church to us as we're learning together. It's so welcoming, it is special." It's hard to put into words how Forestry is and what I believe happens when we meet. It feels sacred and at times like a thin place. Friendships are made, and conversations happen easily, particularly around our fire pit. Our attendance figures do range in number. So our last 3 foresties have had 45, 22 and 30 people attend. When it's really bad weather, we're forced inside, the number drops, but we don't worry about it. So what you can see here is our Christingle. Now, because we're inside, this was our 22 people attending figure. And it's very dark because we're all holding our lit Christingles. The main thing for us is that those who come feel loved, supported, and known. They need to know that we care, and we think they do. Here they have the option to talk about all things mysterious, holy, and ordinary. On this image is a dad in a red coat helping his son in a green coat with some white wool. We have a good number of dads who come to this, including some single dads. And I don't know exactly why Forestry attracts such a diverse group of people, but I do think the outdoor element makes it easier for many. There's no threshold to cross. The space does not obviously belong to an institution. There's no places you cannot sit because so-and-so sits there every week. It's there for everybody. And we do have some people who attend Inherited Church and Forestry, but I would say 2/3 don't. We also have a number of young people who have autism and ADHD. And I think being outside, being able to run in a safe space surrounded by moving trees, insects, etc., is just an easier place to be, rather than a building where the expectation is still to be largely still and to sit within a room or two. Now, some of you may follow Forest Church on Facebook, and the author Rachel Summers posted this. I have ADHD, and I always say being in nature allows me to be still because nature fidgets for me. The trees move, the clouds move, the hoverfly moves, and the air moves. I can be still. That quote speaks to what I see in some of our young people and their parents. I think God's nature, the world God created us to live in, naturally calms us all in different ways. Often I notice as we close Forestry, people hang back. They hang around the campfire talking. Young people start playing games, often assisted by some of the dads. The sense of being part of something wider, a bigger family, emerges. It's often the image that I'm left with after our time together, and it's really beautiful. In the longer term, we hope to create some home groups as we are mindful that we meet bi-monthly, which some would say isn't enough. I think, like everything, for some it really is enough. For others, they would be more open to have more times together. As a team, we want to give this project time to breathe and develop naturally, keen to watch closely for the regular attendees to voice that gathering more is desired. Last time we had a young person feedback that they would come weekly if they could, so perhaps that is the beginning of that conversation. As a team, we firmly believe in being church together, a connection, them, not us. We learn, worship, and be together. Whatever happens next, and whatever it looks like, will be shaped by the Forestry community. We are excited for that future. I'm going to leave you with this quote, which I think sums up why seeing God in the outdoors happens so easily, and it comes from George Washington Carver. I love to think of nature as an unlimited broadcasting station through which God speaks to us every hour if we will only tune in. Thank you for listening.